Welcome to Let's Grab a Cup podcast, where we talk about leadership, authenticity, resiliency. We provide a place to hold space for one another. I'm your host, Adam Sturgeon. So why don't you grab a cup of coffee or tea or whatever suits you at this moment. Let's dive in. All right, my name is Adam Sturgeon, and this is the Let's Grab a Cup podcast. I'm sitting here with Matthew and Christina Dages, who are in Southern California. Matthew was a police officer in La Mesa for about 2.5 years when he got into a use of force with an individual, and that caused a long legal battle. And eventually he ended up losing his job for the same use of force. And right now, both of them have been out just trying to push this message out and get Matthew reinstated with La Mesa. And right now we're going to just talk about what happened and how it's been for them going through this whole situation. So I appreciate you both being on this morning. Thank you very much for coming in.
Yeah.
Thanks, Adam.
We're
it's an
excited
honor.
to be here.
I say coming in, but I mean, we're on Zoom. So, I mean, you really don't have to go very far. So, all right, well, let's just kind of dig in. I'm really curious about, I know we'll get into the case a little bit, but I'm really curious about both of your upbringing and where you guys came from, how you got together, but even before that, why, I don't know, what you did, what you do, why do you want to be a police officer? And then also Christina, where you came from, how you guys kind of came together.
Yeah.
Do you want to lead us off or?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. So we're both San Diego natives, which you don't hear about too often, but our families are here. So we've both been raised in this community, love San Diego. And, we both kind of come from a long lineage of military service members and law enforcement as well. So we kind of always joke that service is in our DNA. Matthew's grandfather and great-grandfather were captains and detectives at LASD.
Wow.
All of our parents are military veterans. So serving the community is kind of just something that's ingrained in who we are. I can say how we met, and then you can talk about kind of the police journey from there. But we met at the gym in San Diego. I approached him after kind of just stalking him from afar for a long time, because I just thought he was so beautiful, and we were both at the gym every single evening. And so I thought, we both had the same commitment to fitness, and I had to get to know him. So, we went on a couple dates and kind of realized we've got faith in common and fitness, and our families are both San Diego native. So things took off from there. We got married right at the end of 2019, and then 2020, the world lost its mind.
Yeah, no kidding. I feel like the stalking at the gym thing should be gone the opposite way. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I definitely was aware of her at the gym, but maybe just watching from afar and would never have the balls to go up and talk to her. So she ended up, letting fate do its thing and went for it. So it was fun. But yeah, we met, and then we met before I was a cop, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So pretty much right before. And then at the time I was working a 9-to-5. I'd got out of college, was trying to just figure out what I was going to do with my life. I had known my whole life I wanted to be a cop. And ever since I was a kid, it's just all I really wanted to do. But I kept on getting pushed other directions from family and doing stuff like that. You don't want to be a cop, hearing you don't want to do it. It's a thankless job. Everyone hates you. It's,
These were the family members that were in policing already?
No, just family that that were, military veterans. My dad, was a veteran, but he worked, a corporate job his whole life, but he's just it's just and we have family friends that are police officers and stuff like that. And it's and I even went and spoke with a couple of them beforehand, and they had done their 30 years, and they're like, dude, this is not the time to be a cop. This was in 2014, 15 or something like that. I know this is, it's not the same job, that it was in 1995 or 2000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And obviously, right, the job's totally different.
Always changing. I mean, it's always changing, but I remember when I started 06, even then from 6 to 14, it was still a huge change, 10 years, right? And almost, and then, people were saying the same thing. In the 90s, it was like this. So I can imagine when you started what people were saying to you. Yeah.
So it was, but I finally, I just was I remember just for a long time, it was on my heart for a long time. And I'm just I'm just going to do it. I felt doing the 9-to-5 thing, it wasn't fulfilling for me. I just wanted and was drawn to it. And I knew in my heart that I wanted to be a cop. So I told her one day, this is, I'm going to go for it. She's like, do it. Like, that's awesome. You should do it. And, I started doing the application process, which is that's a whole journey, like trying to become like a new recruit. You know what I mean? Get your foot in the door.
Open up your whole life to these investigators.
Yeah. Then you don't know anything. So you're going through like, getting strapped up to a polygraph for different agencies. And, I remember it was like, I applied, and you don't know anything about the different agencies either. Like whenever you're in like, if you're in San Diego or if you're in LA County or whatever county you're at, you don't really know anything about all the different agencies in the county, right? And then once you get in, you find out like what's the good place to work, what's the shit place to work, who has good leadership, who doesn't have good leadership, who gets, funding and all that other stuff. But so I just kind of shotgunned my applications out, and I'll never forget. It was like just seeing all the different, and when I was applying, there was like, I applied first like San Diego PD. And for anyone that doesn't know, they're, I think probably the second biggest agency in San Diego behind the sheriff's department. So they have like, 1,500 officers or give or take.
Oh, wow. How big is La Mesa?
La Mesa is the smallest department in the county. So we have 70-ish officers, 70.
Okay.
So it's a city of like around, I think it's probably closer to 80,000 people.
Okay.
But the department's pretty small. But yeah, so San Diego PD is definitely the largest or second largest behind the sheriff's department. Sheriff's department's huge. It's got like, a few thousand deputies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember just like, even when I applied to La Mesa, San Diego PD, wherever it was, the sheriff's department, there was like 500-600 people showing up, and when I applied to La Mesa, and this was in 2017, it was like 400 people showed up for the written test, and they were like, yeah, we got 2 openings. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, this is like insane.
Like percentage, like 1%, less than 1% chance there.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's how it was when you applied too. It was like, you really had to fight to get your foot in the door when, and I know it's changed a little bit, but
the lines, I remember the lines being like around the corner to take the test. And now they're like fighting to get an academy
just to show up.
People. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's what it was for me. It was like there was lines around the block, like just around the community room or whatever, just to take a freaking written test, or people were flying in to take a PAT, and like from out of state. I remember people like flying in to do the wall jump and couldn't even get over the wall. I'm like, yeah, you just flew in to do this. You can't even get over the 6-foot wall, but okay.
Did you practice, man? Come on.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I got hired by La Mesa. And basically, I loved it there. It was like, that's where I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to be there. Like, I had applied to a bunch of different agencies, and I wanted to be at La Mesa. I had friends that in law enforcement that were kind of pointing me there. And then once I got there, it was like, it's a small agency. So that has like its perks of like, everyone knows each other. It's kind of got like, at the time, it was like, a family, and everyone has everyone's back. You're not a number, right? And it's like a big agency. Went through the academy, that's a blast. In San Diego, it's a regional academy, so everyone goes to the same one.
Oh, okay.
And then
through the sheriff's department, or it's not?
It's put on. It's like a multi-agency, so like it's put on mainly by like, every agency has representatives working there essentially.
Okay.
So there's like TOs from like the sheriff's. It's mainly sheriff's department in San Diego PD because they're the largest agency, but then they have Carlsbad, Oceanside, Elko, like all these different agencies have TOs there too. So graduated, went to patrol, got through phase training. And that was like, another, because we as a family, we were just like trying to get through the academy, going through that grind every day, kind of just like waking up, getting smoked all day, coming home, passing out.
Now, was Christina was she one of the wives that had like the flashcards made for you and the lunches ready for you to go?
I think, yeah, she definitely was helping me out a lot.
There's like 2 sides to it. So yes, like I was his biggest supporter and just so proud of him. But like, I thought it was hilarious that he would come home every day at like, 4 p.m. and pass out on the couch, like mouth wide open. Yeah. So I had some fun with it. I do also have a lot of spy pictures of him just completely zonked out because you work so hard in the academy. So it was fun for me to kind of witness his journey.
Yeah. So then like the next thing was, as for everyone goes, it's like you're in phase training, and then that's a whole another stressful situation, depending on what agency you're at. Some are way more stressful than others. And then I was out on the street and, on my own. just doing patrol and working nights for a while. Got pretty fortunate, got on the SWAT team in 2019.
You were on the SWAT team?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's normal like a time frame to go on the SWAT team?
It depends. I would say that I was definitely the youngest guy there for sure. I mean, I know that there was a lot of other guys there was a few other guys that made it on pretty quick, but they were all like combat military guys.
Is there something you did specifically that like got that attention, or were you working with them a lot, or were you doing something?
I mean, I just busted my ass.
Yeah. I was gonna say, if he's not gonna say it, I will. Like, he was a hard charger. He made a really good reputation for himself. Like, he was getting commendations left and right from like the chief and his field training officer. And so I think he made a good name for himself right off the bat.
It was just fun. Like, I love the job. I mean, it's like, you know, it's like every day. And I mean, up until COVID, right? It was like every day is like going out with your friends and having a blast. Like, you know, I mean, yeah, it's not always a fun job, right? There's some negative parts, but the job itself is fun, and you know, you can make it. It's I always tell everyone, it's like, and some people don't understand, it's like you can be the cop that whatever cop you want to be, you can be, and like you make the job what it is yourself. So if you want to sit back and just respond to radio calls and, you know, not do anything or whatever you want to do, and some days, you know, you need that time to do that. You can do that.
You always need downtime.
Yeah, of course. If you want to chill, like and I know people don't like to hear it, but it's like, you know, sometimes, and we're a busy agency. So it's like, sometimes, you know, you're running 30 calls a day or something like that. So you don't really have time to be proactive, but the job's what you make of it. So if you want to go out there and make stops and get arrests and, you know, put bad guys in jail, and you can do that too. It's fun. So,
and that's what most of us sign up for, right? Put bad guys in jail. I mean, that's what we wanted to do.
Yeah, that's what all of us signed up for. And then, you know, California kind of like changed a little bit, but
the world changed for a little. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like everybody. Yeah. It felt like a lot of people decided we don't want you doing police work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether that's a truth or not, that's what it feels like.
Yeah. It was interesting when I like kind of started to realize when, you know, it was like people that were already on probation or something like that, you know, and then I'm sure you saw it because you were, when you started, you know, meth and heroin were a felony, right?
Oh yeah, yep, absolutely. Dude, we were still enforcing weed laws. I mean, you know.
Oh yeah, weed, and Prop 47 wasn't around.
No, Prop 47, 57, none of that stuff.
Yeah, so you could actually take people to jail for shoplifting and doing stuff like that too.
Commercial burglary.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so we got, and if people are listening out of state, it's like in California, you know, you catch someone for possession of heroin and meth, and it's a misdemeanor. And in most cities, cite and release on the spot. You're not even going to book them in jail.
Right.
La Mesa was pretty strict on booking requirements, so we had to book people in jail for meth and heroin and stuff like that. But you know, a lot of agencies like San Diego PD, if they're busy, it's like they're not going to take someone out of service for an hour and a half to go book, then potentially get rejected and go to the hospital. It's not worth it for that crime, because also, you know, come to find out, the DA is not going to actually charge them or follow through. So that's when, like, kind of like you see behind the curtain of like what's going on in the state, and you kind of realize, like, man, it's like you're busting your ass, but are these, like, is the fruits of your labor really coming to fruition? Are you making a difference?
Right.
And
I think that's the thing right now when they say, like, you take someone to jail and they're out. Like, some people, it's out before your report's done or out the next day or whatever, you know, and you're like, and then somebody on the street is literally asking you, or trying to get you to arrest the same person for the same crime. And you're like, no, we already arrested them. And like, they're already out. Yeah, they're already out. Like, we can't do it again. We can't arrest them again. There
was several times when it was like, you know, you take someone even for like a 5150, and it's like, in California, that's like a mental psychiatric hold. And you take them for 5150. And I remember, like, they would get out of the hospital before I would get out of the hospital. And I'm not kidding. And it was like, they would just walk in the door, they'd give them their bus pass and a sandwich, and they'd be out before I could fill out my paperwork. And it's like, that's just, you know, unfortunately, that's the system. But yeah, so that, you know, I still had a blast. Like, I kept my head up about that kind of stuff. And like I said, like, if I could make a difference in any way, it was still fun for me every day. So But then once COVID hit, everything changed. We had gotten married in 2019, in December of 2019. So right before COVID hit.
And then we were gone for like a month in Latin America. That's where we did our honeymoon. So it's like wedding at the end of December 19. We didn't get back to like February or March, literally as the borders were closing, got hit with that crisis. And then his incident happened just like a couple months later. So it's been an interesting newlywed phase for us.
Where in Latin America did you go?
So we went to Argentina and Chile. And we did some like really rugged hiking, and then we just kind of like got lost in the wine region of Argentina. So it was a really nice balance.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. Is there something that before like the incident happened and like COVID and all these things, was there something that you did together? I know you said you worked out, you guys met at the gym. Did that continue? How did you guys take care of yourself before everything changed? Like how were you guys taking care of yourselves and just general life stuff before we get into like the hard stuff? We had
4 dogs at the time.
We have one right here.
One
so
underneath me
right now.
Down, it's he's high maintenance. He's like he's a deaf dog, and he's like always just, if you don't have a deaf dog, don't get one.
No, that's not
what kind of dog? What kind of dog is it?
Special needs dogs.
They're very vocal dogs, even though they can't hear themselves. So he's like,
tell him what kind of dog
he's like just he's a white pit bull.
Okay.
And white, sweet man.
He's very sweet and cuddly, but if he's like away from us or whatever, he gets very antsy.
You should show his face really quickly because he's basically part of the podcast.
That's funny. I like how Christina said, "Don't say deaf. He's special needs."
Well, and promote special needs because he's just a big sweetie.
Oh my goodness!
Literally, the hardest thing about him is he just needs to be touched constantly. So we have a lot of dogs. We're crazy.
So yeah, we spend a lot of time with our dogs. We used to do, like, when COVID hit, that was I remember we were just trying to get outside, go hiking a lot.
Which they closed hiking trails for a long time here.
How insane is that?
I was like, we were just like,
parks were closed.
Come on, the beach paths were closed. Like what makes no sense?
The water. I remember I was on it was like right when COVID really started cracking down, like the quarantine stuff, and I was doing like a stone garden at the beach, doing like some stuff with Border Patrol guys, and they closed like the water down, and I was like, how are you guys gonna close the beach, like the ocean? I don't understand.
It makes no sense. Like, I feel like society is either gonna do one of two things. Either we're all gonna be crazy in like 10 years, 12 years, or we're gonna look back at ourselves and be like, what were we thinking?
I think that, and also what I'm hoping is we'll look back and be like, never again, right? Like we all learned that we kind of were a little bit sheepish at first, and we can't ever allow for that type of overreach again, at least in my opinion. But yeah, so we did what we could to kind of take care of ourselves, but COVID was definitely a curveball. And kind of as our situation just continued to like bubble over and unfold, I think the primary thing we relied on for self-care and just like survival was our faith.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, we spend a lot of time with family. Like both of our families are here local.
Even before early on, like when you guys were first together, you spend time with the family a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, her, like she has siblings that are like her age, like, we go out with, or, we'd go downtown San Diego, just have, go drinking, whatever. And just have a lot of like quality family time. Just fun time together. And then kind of as people have added like kids to the mix, it's kind of been like taking away, like no more bars. Now we're at people's houses and
watching Encanto or
birthday parties.
Oh my gosh, get me started on that movie. I can't get that out of my head. Yeah. My girls are playing it nonstop.
Aw,
yeah,
it's great so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that was kind of like 2020 like hit us for what, like hard. It was 2020 was weird just for everyone, obviously.
Yeah.
But so then I remember, so my incident, if anyone doesn't know, it happened 2 days after George Floyd. And that was obviously the catalyst that caused my incident to be anything, because in my opinion, it probably, and in other people's opinions, it would not have been anything at all without that week.
Well, I highly doubt it would have been. No, a lot of incidents around the world, but yeah, specifically what you went through, I don't think so. Yeah.
And I think a lot of other metro police officers, I'm sure you can relate to it working in Long Beach, or anyone in Southern California, you can relate to like those types of interactions. I don't want to say that they're regular, but they're not uncommon.
Right.
And people that are going to have like an anti-police narrative, or they're not going to want to cooperate or whatever. It's part of it's the nature of the beast. It's like, it's part of working in a big city. And it's unfortunate. It's not something that any police officer wants to be involved in. You don't want to. One of the things that I think the narrative is like the police in general are like looking for a fight or like looking to get into a use of force with people. And it's like, that's the opposite. It's like, I tell people all the time, it's like, everyone's goal is to go home. Like everyone's goal is to, you know, be safe, and no one wants to get into a fight. And it's like, I think it's like a joke that it's the truth. It's the truth. It's like, if you could hand someone your handcuffs and be like, okay, handcuff yourself.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they would do it. Everyone would do that. I mean,
Have you done that? I haven't done that specifically, but I've joked around. I've taken my handcuffs out and I said, here you go. Like the joke. And then they're like, and they're what? And I'm like, no, I'm kidding. You're not under arrest. Like, it wasn't like a real crime. I was just messing around with them. But like, just like the metaphor of like handing some of their handcuffs.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not uncommon to get into use of force. It's not uncommon to have someone that's like in your face or angry or upset. And that's understandable. I mean, if you're, I can put myself in someone else's shoes and be like, understand why they're upset, but it's not an uncommon situation, especially in Southern California.
Yeah.
But yeah, so May 27th, it was 2 days after George Floyd happened. It was like a normal day for me. I was working overtime. Actually, we had like I had like a SWAT training the next day, so I was actually on day shift, which is like probably like #1 red flag there. And
usually work graveyard.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was like adjusted shift. It was just like, you know, kind of like a lazy day a little bit, just running call to call, and not trying to get into anything. I was just trying to get through the day, because I knew I had to be up early next morning, kind of do weird stuff. And another partner of mine hit me up, and she's like a much more, like, she is like 20 plus years on. She's like one of the more senior officers at the department. She texted me and she's like, hey, I want to do this detail at the trolley station. I have a trainee. Would you come and help us out? I can't get anyone to help. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll come swing by. And so these trolley stations are throughout the whole county. And, you know, San Diego has like several million people that live there. So we have, like, in the city of La Mesa, there's like 5 trolley stops.
Is it trolley, like the trolley, like the old school trolleys?
Yeah. Yeah. No, not like,
or is it like a train? Are we talking about trains?
More like a
metro train?
Yeah, like a train.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know you've said trolley in like other interviews, and I'm like, is it actual trolley? Like you know, I'm imagining like the San Francisco trolleys.
Yeah, that's a good question. No,
it's like a
railed system.
Like an outdoor subway type of thing.
Similar.
Yeah.
I think it goes through Southern California.
It's similar to like the coaster in a way. Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious. I'm like, hey, here's a trolley. I'm like, I wonder if that's just what they call it down.
That's just what it's called. But yeah. So there's 5 of them in the city. They're like by far the most high crime areas of the city, obviously, because people hop on and off. And this one in particular is right next to a mall, and it's like super high crime for like burglaries, robberies, you know, just the same stuff that's always going on. And it's an easy, quick in and out of the city. You can hop on it and get to San Diego downtown. You can hop on it and go farther east. So criminals use it as like a escape or entrance or whatever, and obviously take advantage of people there. It's a, you know, crime of opportunity. And so we're there all the time. We're there every day, basically, no matter what, but for calls and various stuff. But we sometimes do these, well, we do them quite frequently, where we go down there as like, if we have time off or whatever, an hour off, there'll be like 3-4 officers that go down there. And it's just like, you're just doing enforcement stuff, you know, checking passes. There's like a million ordinances in the trolley stations.
Right. Is La Mesa in charge of these certain stations, or is it a sheriff's department and you guys also enforce it, or how does that work?
So the way that it's always been, it's interesting. So there's a trolley enforcement. They have like their own police.
Okay. Oh, okay. It's not,
but they're not.
Department.
It's almost like, do you know, like San Francisco has a BART?
Yeah.
So BART is actually police officers though. And in San Diego, they have like armed guards that are like go on these trolleys and stuff like that. And then they have guys that are unarmed that do like ticketing stuff, but I don't believe they have police officer power, like arresting power. So they can like ticket for citations and stuff like that and detain people, but then they always call the PDs in whatever agency to like handle their business.
Right.
So usually if there's like a radio call for service, if there's a crime that happens, the PD's always reported. The PDs are always going down there to take the paper for it. So whatever, no matter what, it's like the stuff that comes out of that place always like bleeds into the city, so it becomes our problem. So we're there on a regular basis. So we go down there, it's really just like a proactive detail, but it's more about presence and deterring crime and doing that kind of thing. So it was myself and 2 other officers and then a trainee. One of the officers was that senior officer. She had been on about 20 years. Another officer that was there had just gotten off phase training, like within weeks. And then a trainee who was in like phase 1. So we get there.
So there's mostly young officers and like one senior officer.
Yeah. And we get there and, we just kind of like spread out, we just go talk to everyone. There wasn't a ton of people there, but as the train comes and goes, as people get on and off, you're asking for passes, you can't ride your bike on the platform or on the property. You can't ride a skateboard. You can't play loud music, whatever. So your main thing is you're just going to go up and talk to everyone. You're looking for people on parole, probation, that kind of thing. So I go up, I see this guy, I approach him, we have a conversation. And I essentially asked him for a trolley pass. He didn't have it. He gets into an argument with me when I tell him he's detained. And then he actually pushed me. And then at that same time, his friends came up. I didn't know they were his friends at that time, but they start screaming at me. And I'm focused on like multiple things at the same time. So I'm just trying to contain him in front of me, because after he pushed me, it's like, okay, this is no longer this is no longer an infraction. Like you're going to be placed under arrest.
Right.
And I'm now trying to handle this. So I end up detaining him. The other officers come and help me out. We put him in handcuffs. We place him under arrest. Take him back to the station, cut him a citation because I can't book him for it. And
they wouldn't let you book him for assaulting a police officer?
Well, and normal situation, we would have been able to, but because this was May of 2020 in the height of COVID, there was almost, we were citing and releasing for 10.851s. Like we weren't even able to book for stolen vehicles. So,
oh yeah, because everyone was worried everyone was gonna get sick all the time.
Yeah. So the booking requirements to get booked into jail, it was like basically violent felonies and nothing else was bookable. So he got a citation.
I feel like this is borderline. Like, all right, I feel like I would push it. I would want to push it, but
I could have pushed it, and I'm sure I could.
I'm not saying you didn't do enough. I'm just saying I think that I feel like the booking sergeant, whoever's in charge, should have pushed it.
I agree. Assault on a police officer is a big damn deal.
Yeah. You put your hands on a police officer, and like you're going to be like held accountable, like for sure. And that's why I was like, at that point, it was like out of my hands. And I'm not, we're not there to arrest people. I'm not there to do it. Like we're just there and in those situations, in general, like I use my discretion all the time. You know what I mean? I'm not someone that's out there letter of the law writing tickets for everything that I see. 99% of the time or 90% of the time, like I'm going to give you a warning. I'm going to let you go. Like it's not a big deal. Like I just, I'm just trying to do my job. If you're just, going about your day, like I'm going to let you continue about your day. I'm not trying to get anyone a ticket and ruin your day. You know what I mean? So I didn't know this at the time, but so I continued my shift. I got home at 8 p.m. Unbeknownst to me, his friends had posted the video of our interaction.
A part of the interaction.
Because so they started recording after he pushed me.
Okay.
And
how did were they nearby, or did he call?
Yeah, so they pulled up just right when we were getting into it, basically. And he pushed me, and then that's when they started recording afterwards.
Okay.
And then there was like a 45-second clip or whatever it was of me detaining him. And I'll just preface it, if you want, people can go watch the video. It's everywhere. But there was the use of force was like as minor. It's a use of force, but not really. I pushed him backwards into a seat.
Right.
And he was never injured. There was no injuries. It was like, he was in the situation is he was in my face, and I was pushing him backwards into a seated position and put him in handcuffs. It was like as simple as you can possibly get it.
I mean, it's all the body cam shows like the whole thing. I mean, it shows the whole thing, and then even you telling him why he's being arrested.
Yeah,
it's not like it wasn't even like he could be surprised because you said it you said it on camera. This
Yeah.
is, you just hit me or you pushed me, you're under arrest. Like it was very simple. It wasn't like it wasn't like hiding why he was being arrested or anything like that. So
No.
Of course. And it was like, and on top of that, he admitted multiple times on the body worn camera to me that he pushed me. You know, it was like, he knew, he admitted it.
Right.
And I was very upfront with him as to like, and I told him, like, even when I arrested him, and I know he was upset, and it's like, he was upset. I want to remove myself like from it, because I know I'm triggering him to get angry. So
right.
I tried to remove myself, and then I take him to my car and I told him, like, look, I'm like, dude, this is a cite and release. Like, just take a breath. Okay. I know you're upset, but you've taken it out of my hands. Like, I cannot let you go at this point. So unbeknownst to me, his friends posted it on Instagram that night, or like probably shortly after, and they used the hashtag George Floyd, you know, saying that this was police brutality. Mind you, there was no injuries. There was like, this was, you know, it was more me pushing him backwards was more me keeping myself safe and keeping distance from him than anything else.
Oh, and you put him back in a seated position, which we all are trained on, keeping control of people and then not having them in the position of an advantage. So it's
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
he had been instructed multiple times, like, stay seated, stop springing up into my face. And it's just like,
yeah. So, I mean, fast forward, you know, when this all comes out, it's like, I think because of course, every minutia of this whole incident was broken down.
Right.
And it was like, I think over 10 times that I told him to take a seat. And, you know, he stood up on me like 4 or 5 different times or whatever it was. And so he posted the video. It like gets wildfire, because this was 2 days after George Floyd. And this is like ramping up into that weekend of the riots that were across the whole country. So that night we had protesters at our house. And
so when I originally saw your story, I didn't even know that part about the rioters in front of your house. And when I saw you guys on the Cleared Hot podcast, I'm like, I was like getting chills imagining like the idea of people coming into your house.
Well, it was so weird because I lived outside the city, but basically like right on the border. Like it was
like 3 miles from the PD.
3
like,
miles
you
from
live
the city,
very close,
but a different city over. But so that evening it went viral. I got a phone call from one of my partners that was working that night, and he was like one of my best friends, and he's like, dude, he's like, your video's on Facebook. And I'm like, I don't have social media at all. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, the arrest from earlier, it's on Facebook. And I'm like, what? And this is like before really the George Floyd thing was even on my radar. Like, I had known that it had happened, but it was before it became like a national thing, right? It was just starting to really grow. So I wasn't hyper aware of like all these videos going viral and all this stuff. And this is, you know, pre all that. So he sends me the video, and I remember on Facebook, it had like 80,000 views or something like that. And this has only been posted a couple hours. And I was like, I just remember my heart dropping, because I just knew right then. I was like, I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew, I was like, this is going to be a problem. Like this is going to be problematic, you know, only because, and I will preface it by saying that only because of the attention that it was getting. And I knew that in the city that I worked at, it was like anything that just the minor, like someone comments on a Facebook post on the city's Facebook, and that becomes a problem. So I just was like, and immediately I saw in the comments that it was a problem, because I saw in the comments, people were posting our address in the comments, I think. And we had no idea.
These are complete strangers that are getting our address and posting them.
Yeah. And so I remember it being like, oh my God, this is horrible. And like, you know, it was like, you know, just, it was the worst feeling ever. And it was just.
Were you both home at the time when they showed up?
Yeah, we were both home. So it got posted. And then
it's important to like kind of give people like the chronology of it. Like, he literally gets home. I remember putting dinner on the table. Like, I think the first thing that happened was we got a notification on our phones. We have the Ring camera system. Yeah. So we got a notification that there was movement in our driveway, and we look, and there's like people out there. There's like,
well, so let me reverse. So one of my partners that worked with me that night knew that it got posted. and was like, he came to my house and he's like, because we live right on the border, he's like, hey, I'm just gonna have lunch out here. This was like, I had just gotten home. And he's like, I'm just gonna have lunch here tonight and just sit down the street just in case anything weird happens.
I mean, that's kind of, that's cool.
Literally, but within 5 minutes,
Yeah.
there was 20 people outside the house.
Yeah, and
then so like our Ring camera went off, and we had Ring cameras like all around the house, and we pull it up, and all I see is red and blue lights outside my house. So then there was like a squad call out from like multiple agencies, and it just turned into like 10 different, you know, black and whites like outside the house. And I was like, we both stayed inside, but I was just like,
so it was like, I mean, he gets home, that all happens, and he gets a call from his partner talking about it being online. And so it really just like 0 to 60 in like a matter of seconds for us. And it got so big, so bad. It was a struggle at first to understand, like, why are people at our home? Like, why would they come to, like, do they know who we are? Like, do they know like what's in our hearts is more what I meant. Like,
right.
That was really hard for me as a police wife to understand, like, there must be some mistake. Like, we are good people. What are their intentions? Like, why are they here?
Well, and you had like the video, right? And I was just remember seeing the video, and all like, it was all obviously negative, hateful comments towards me. Yeah. And as for me, that was like heartbreaking, because like I said earlier, like this was I love that. Like I know the person that I am. I know what's in my heart. Like I know how I work, how I operate in my job, how I operate in my life. And it's like, I am like none of those things, like people judging you and putting you in a spotlight. That's like, it was what was heartbreaking. And I was like, and super like demoralizing immediately. So then we had the people outside our house, you know, and that went on for days.
That's
so
insane. That's insane. Like imagining that is insane.
Yeah. So we left.
Well,
basically
we were advised by his SWAT commander. They were like, hey, there's a lot of online targeting for your address. There's death threats. Like, there's a larger protest being planned for that weekend, which was in a couple of days. And he was just like, you know, just as a precaution, maybe like pack an overnight bag, go stay with family. And we were horrified, and we were like, okay. And so we packed our many dogs into the car and went and stayed with family for what we thought was like a couple of days, maybe. And the sad reality is like the online doxing never ended. And it got to a point where it was like, okay, even if when this does taper off and calm down, it's like, all it takes is one crazy person who has access to our address now to show up at 2 a.m. Maybe he's not home, maybe he's working. And it's just like, for us, we had lost that peace of mind, that sense of security. And while, you know, we'll get to like his IA and everything, while all this is unfolding, we have to like sell our house and move for safety purposes. Like,
I'm curious. Okay. So first of all, if people that are listening don't know what doxing is, is when you guys want to explain it, or you guys have probably more know about what.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically like when people share your personal information, address, phone number, and it's usually for like malicious intent, right?
Yeah.
So
bullying purposes.
And how easy is it to get your information? Like a quick Google search?
So easy.
If you don't protect your information, it is incredibly easy. And let our story be a cautionary tale for law enforcement families. Like, take this very seriously. Scrub your personal information from the internet. There are services you can pay that'll do that for you. Like, we use officerprivacy.com. This is not a joke. This is not something like, oh yeah, I'll get to it one day. Do it right now, because had we had the foresight to protect our information, we'd still be in our beautiful home right now.
Well, it's interesting because it's like, it wasn't just my phone number, her phone number. It was my parents. They put my parents' address up because it was like any address that I had linked to me, essentially. So then like the sheriff's department so basically there was an officer at my house and my parents' house for like 2 to 3 weeks, 24 hours a day.
And didn't even show up at any of your family members' houses?
No, thankfully, no. But they just did it as a precaution. They're like, let's just, you know, whatever. And this was like in the height of all the madness. So we didn't. And I remember like when I got on at the PD, it was like, there's these companies that do that scrubbing and stuff for cops. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, who's going to figure out your address? I'm like, why would I pay to do that? I'm like, that's dumb.
I think we've all had that same feeling, because I know they've been putting it out at our department too, like over and over again throughout the years. And I think it really started in like 2016, around that time. And then you kind of hit or miss. Like some people would do it, some people wouldn't, but it's like, well, yeah,
it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth it. That's all I can say. There's no doubt. It's like, it's the easiest thing. And then for anyone that's listening, that's in LE, it's like you can move your house into a trust, because your house, your ownership of your home is all public record, right? So if it's under your name, it's like, that's easily fine. That's an easy find right there. So if you move your house into a trust and all that stuff, but come to find out, like all these websites that like sell your data, or if you give them your shipping information and all this stuff. And I think that's another way. So like all these address finders and stuff like that, my address was out there, and and our phone numbers. So, and I've had the same phone number for like, my whole life. So,
not anymore, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I was curious, like, so I know they told you, so the SWAT commander, and they said, hey, this stuff is going on. We're seeing all this kind of chatter. We suggest you go to your family's house. And obviously you took that on pretty seriously, but then did that department, and I really don't answer this. So the department do anything specifically for you while this is going on, or was it all just like, hey, good luck surviving on your own?
That's what they did. Yeah. So, and it was like this was uncharted territory, right?
Yeah.
How do you handle this? And I don't know that, I think they handled it initially. I'm saying like how we handled things and how they were trying to navigate the situation for us and our home situation, that was handled fine. I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, they had officers outside my house 24 hours a day. So then that led into, my incident happened on Wednesday, the 27th. On Saturday, the 30th, that's when all the nationwide protests happened, right?
Yeah.
And that's when the riots really kicked off.
So in San Diego, there was a larger protest planned downtown.
So yeah, so BLM had like there was a George Floyd protest planned for downtown San Diego, as there was for like every metro area. And because of my incident and it getting so much news attention, they moved it to La Mesa, because La Mesa, we're 10 minutes from downtown San Diego. So they moved it over. They're like, hey, let's move it to La Mesa. And that's what they did. And
how many people showed up?
Thousands.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was like, my understanding is, of course, none of those people were from the area,
right?
Coming down from LA, San Bernardino, whatever, and however they got there. I'll just put it that way. And, obviously these are people that are coming with bad intentions. So that just turned into a riot. And then, I don't think any agency was really prepared for that, just across the board.
It became a war zone. Like buildings were burned down. Businesses were, vandalized and looted. And it was heartbreaking for us, because that was our community. Like we lived there. We did all of our grocery shopping there. We went to the restaurants there. Like that was our home. And we just felt so heartbroken that like,
yeah. And it was heartbreaking for me because I was on admin leave. So I got put on admin leave on Friday, and I knew that was going to happen.
So it was right away. They didn't waste any time.
No, they're like, look, we're going to do an investigation they said we're going to do an investigation for use of force. I had no, and I was never worried ever about this, because even when it happened, even after it was posted, I was so sad and heartbroken that it was becoming something, but I was like never concerned for my reasons for my stop, my arrest itself, the whole situation, how I handled it professionally. I felt like I followed the law. I did what I was trained to do. I handled it professionally. I never was concerned. I was concerned for my family's safety, but I was never concerned about my job or anything like that, because someone that I know how I work, and I know that I read legal updates. I follow everything. So, I knew my use of force was good. I know like the legal background behind it and the Supreme Court case. I know that. So I was like, all right, like do what, and I know how it's like, okay, there's going to be an IA, do your thing. Like, and I know this is just a standard procedure, do your IA, whatever. That's fine. I'm confident in it. So, I went on admin leave on Friday, but the riots happened on Saturday. So it was heartbreaking for me because we were watching it at home, on TV. And
is
it was
is that feeling that you feel like you can't do anything to help?
100%. Yeah. And it was just, I'm getting, videos and texts from guys there. And it was just a war zone, because, it was like literally like trying to take over the police station.
Yeah.
And, you had the SWAT team, the guys that I work with every day, on the roof of the police station, just trying to fend people off, trying to use gas and everything else. And the SO came in, and then I remember watching like our Bearcat go out there to try to disperse some people, and they like just tore the crap out of the Bearcat.
Really?
Yeah.
What did they?
And
I don't even know. Never seen that before. What do they do to tear it up?
they were like so there was these big, hindsight's 2020, but they used in the city to decorate the landscaping, use these big rocks, right? They're like these big pointy rocks. They're pretty big, and they turned into, like, obviously that was their number one weapon that they were using. So people were just and people were just jumping on top of the Bearcat. I've never seen anything like it in my whole life,
Crazy.
So I guess like I think they broke the windshield of the Bearcat or something like that, and then they just got out of there. Like the guys in it were like, all right, we're getting out. This is obviously a safety issue. We're getting out of here.
And you would have been with them, right? Being on the SWAT team, you would have been with that team.
I would have been somewhere there for sure. I mean, they were on the roof. They were, doing the perimeter stuff. They were doing all this, everything. So it was all hands on deck situation for everyone. Obviously, the whole department was, because then it got switched to emergency staffing. They had to do emergency staffing, which was 12 on, 12 off every day.
I think that hit all of us.
Yeah, I think everyone was doing
it. Was crazy,
staffing, right?
Nonstop.
And so that was, they had I remember they changed like one of the rooms in the station to like a sleep room where they had like cots and stuff like that, where people were just going to sleep. Because some guys, like, you live an hour away. It's like, you're not going to go home. You're just going to go catch a nap. But some people were working for like 3-4 days straight, with like maybe like 6 hours in between, so it got so bad the National Guard had to get called in.
I feel like, yeah, but I feel like came and they were just like not
Well,
participating.
by the time they showed up, it was already over, right?
Yeah,
so
I mean, it was like standing around. But yeah, it was like they called in all these cities, and then they can't do, because I think because they fall under like military, so their rules are different. And I think we had a National Guard guy that got like a gun pointed at him, and he still couldn't do anything because of like rules of engagement. Like they can't do anything until someone like shoots at them or something. So it's very interesting.
I know it's interesting. Like, I don't know what the situation was in 2020, but I know if you go back to the LA riots, like in the 90s, right, the National Guard showed up, and I don't think they didn't have bullets in their guns, right?
I say I don't remember hearing that, but I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah,
they were deployed with, I believe they had no bullets. They just had like rifles with no bullets. But
so you guys are at home like watching this on the news.
Yeah.
And okay, so you're taking off admin leave, but what is going? I'm kind of curious for Christina, like what's going through your mind at this point? So he's not worried about it at first, because he's like, he's saying that Matt's saying like, hey, I think I'll be fine. Like, use it for, I didn't do anything wrong. So are you in the same boat, or are you feeling something differently?
No, we obviously, like we just shared that when he came home that night and like everything just started like erupting, like we had a very small window, I think like literally 30 seconds for him to tell me like, look, I was at the trolley station, blah, blah, what happened. And then I saw the video and I was just like, okay, this is a non-issue here. So I never had any concerns on that front. Like, I know vicariously what the job of policing entails. I understand use of force is a very normal part. Like, I had no issues with that, but sitting there that night watching all this unfold in a community we loved, to officers that we knew and loved. I mean, that was, obviously we were not on the front lines of it, but that was, I think, one of the most traumatic moments out of our entire 2-year ordeal so far. So to answer your question of like, what was like, I just describe it as kind of like crisis and survival mode. Like you're an officer, so you understand like that adrenaline, like fight or flight, where you're kind of like shaking and you have to take action and something bad is happening and like you have to react. It's that, but like a 2-year period of that, of just being in that mode. So it started for us, I think, that, just right off the bat, watching those, I mean, there was like rioters, like they took over the freeway. We think they were trying, like, it was just heartbreaking. CHP couldn't stop them. And so I just feel like we've been in a prolonged state of like crisis for starting that moment up until we're still battling.
Yeah. Were you both at your our family's house at that point?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you weren't even able to be at home in the comfort of your own home. You're already pushed out, and now
we left.
So that the day of the larger protests in the city where buildings are burned down, we had like a larger protest at our home that took over the entire block. There was like hundreds of people outside of our home, like endangering not just, it's property, endangering our property, but like our neighbors with their kids, and no one deserved that. And the kind of great part about that was like eventually our neighbors were fed up, and our neighbors, we had like a couple CHP officers and military guys in our neighborhood, and they got fed up and they ran all the protesters out of there, which is really great. But
that's good.
But yeah, just like the deep trauma really started, I would say, from from that point on?
Yeah. So we had, so then the IA came down, like we did the IA, and then it was like, you know, they ended up terminating me for what they claimed was dishonesty. Basically it was just all around my PC for the stop, my probable cause, and why I contacted him, or my descriptions of him, and his pre-assaultive behavior. And like, if you watch the video, it's like, it's all on video. It's like, it's still mind-boggling to me. But so they terminate me, and you know, now I'm just like in this battle to like administratively just to get my job back. But at the same time, we weren't really doing anything yet. This is all in 2020. We hadn't really spoken out yet, because I was like, no, we got to stay quiet. Like, we can't do anything.
Well, I think in the beginning, just being so new to this, we were naive, and we were also being advised to like, just trust the process. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? We knew the truth was on our side. We knew the facts were on our side. We're like, we'll just trust the process. And then I think at one point we were just realizing like the process is the punishment, and you've got these people in positions of powers, whether it's through local government or the DA's office, that are going to use you as a political football. And so at some point down the road, you know, we took the gloves off, started fighting back. But kind of, I want for any California, either police wives or police officers listening to this, I do want to highlight one important detail about the IA process, because it was something we had no clue about prior to this, and it's real, it exists. And I just want other police families to know about it. Is the threshold, the burden of proof for these IA investigations, right? Whenever there's like a use of force investigation, whatever it is called preponderance of evidence. And you describe it really well as like,
yeah. So I didn't even know it. I'd never been in an IA before.
Yeah.
And, you know, like if you've never been in one, and then even when they happen to other people, it's always like hush, hush. And like, what's going on? Like, you know, someone goes out on admin leave, you have no idea what happened or whatever. And you don't even really want to know, because you don't want to get pulled in. So I was told like, no, it's like what I was kind of learning the process, and I was told like, it's preponderance of the evidence. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? Yeah. What does that mean? And
define that, please.
Yeah, it's like, so it's 50% plus the weight of a feather, or
isn't that crazy?
50% plus a grain of rice. And I was like, wait, what? Like on my head, like at that point, it was like, so my head was spinning, but I still felt confident because I was like, there's no, like, it's just so clear. Like, I know this, like, it's so clear cut. But if you take a step back and you think about preponderance of the evidence, right? It's super
ambiguous.
It's super ambiguous, but it also like I'm all for police accountability, like 100%. And I want, you know, no good cop wants a bad cop to be out there, you know, getting away with anything. But preponderance of the evidence doesn't do anyone any favors, because, you know, it allows the deck to be stacked potentially unfairly on either side. So it can allow it to just swing either way based upon, well, we believe that this occurred, or we think that this may have occurred, or it's like, it's not even likely to have occurred. It's just 50% plus the weight of it. It's possibly occurred. Essentially, it's just possible.
And I thought it was interesting. Like, it's like you go to, I mean, you had to deal with this in trial, but it's like you're innocent until proven guilty, supposedly, right? Like, even, I mean, supposedly, but you're not in this case. No, you're not innocent until proven guilty, because it's the complaint is this happened, so we need to prove that you're innocent.
Well, and because my case was so public, and there was already like a big media narrative, and it turned into like this whole thing before it even became a criminal case. Everyone in the public already had their minds made up about, oh, well, this is what happened, or this was wrong, or this is XYZ. So I believe, you know, I was guilty until I was proven innocent, and I had to fight to that.
And I would even argue that like he's been proven innocent in a court of law, and many people out there, right, who are like desperately clinging to their anti-cop narrative are still like they're still convinced he's like guilty per se. So it's a really interesting dynamic, I think, that police officers are up against, right? It's like you're already kind of villainized, and then if you just do your normal police tactics and like a video of that goes viral, you're kind of automatically like the demon, and you're crucified. Like, what's in your character, what's in your heart and your character is like, doesn't even matter. And then, you know, you go through all these legal processes, and you're cleared by a jury of unanimously of 12 San Diego citizens.
Right.
And you got a lot of people out there, like part of the social justice movement, that will still say unequivocally, like, no, that's a rogue, racist, lying cop. So it's just like, is there for that group, like, is there any winning? Is there any like making them
I don't
happy?
know if there is. I don't think there is. And I'm almost to a point where like, is it is it so like you're holding on to this belief so hard that you've said it so many times that you can't even acknowledge when you're wrong sometimes?
Right.
Like it's okay to say, hey, look, we were wrong in this case. Like it's okay. Like, yeah, there are cases that they're bad, like you said, bad police officers that do wrong things that we don't agree with.
Right.
But hey, this one, we messed up. We were wrong, and let's fix it. And that's all. It doesn't. It's like, come on, man. Like, just let's fix it. I don't know.
No, they just want to double down.
Yeah,
right?
I know. What was the time frame from so that you're off on the 29th, and then the IA investigation? When were you taken out of duty? How long was the time frame?
Well, so and I mean, you've been on a while. I don't know if you've been but you've been around enough to know that IA processes.
I've had a few IA issues.
Yeah, but usually they go very slowly, right? Sometimes they take 364 and a half days,
right?
Because they have 365 days to do it. For this whole case, this huge gigantic thing, they did the IA in 7 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
And
they were very politically motivated.
Oh yeah.
Give the angry mob like, oh, well, here are the results, So.
Well, so they did the IA. So
they put you in front of everybody else, essentially.
Essentially, when things started to go weird was when they told me, they were like, well, we're hiring an outside firm. We're not going to do. Okay. That was the first step. They told me very early on, they're like, we're not going to have our normal IA process. We're going to hire an outside third-party agency to do this.
Well, and if I can just add a little bit of color to that too, like right after the city burned down on a Saturday, that following day, or Monday, we start getting offers from the city to basically like go away money, right? They like pull me into a meeting and they're just like trying to pull at the heartstrings of the police wife. And they offered us 6 figures to go move up the coast and just start a new life. And we were like, what? Mind blown.
Wait, this is before IA, before a trial or anything? They're just offering you to go away.
This was 2 days, like the day after the city burned down. They brought us into a room and they offered us that. And we were completely blown away because it was like Matthew said, his use of force was good. Why would we resign? And publicly, that's going to look like the cop thought he did something wrong and is resigning in lieu of termination. You're a police officer. That will make you untouchable to any other agency, right? Especially with a viral video. So we declined. We were like, absolutely not. Like we were fully transparent and leaning into the investigation. So once we declined the city's bribe, then they started kind of like making these veiled threats on like, well, even if your use of force is justified, we can still get you for PC or whatever. And then to Matthew's point, normally these IAs are handled internally, right? But in the police department, the city council mandated that they go to an outside investigative firm to do the IA, which was very telling, right? Because if like the city of La Mesa is the paying client and they already have this preconceived notion that there's issues with Matthew's PC, then they're paying this investigative firm to find those exact results. Because
I didn't even know they can do that.
Well, neither did we until we
kind of went maybe the sheriffs, like maybe the sheriff's department or something out, you know what I mean? Maybe this or something. Sometimes the sheriffs come in and they do an investigation, right? Or different things, but like maybe, but what a private firm, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's very telling. Yeah. It's very bizarre. And you can kind of just follow like how they worked backwards, right? They knew his use of force was good. So they launched a use of force investigation and his use of force is good. But now they're, having issues with his PC for the stop. And it's like, well, that's weird. That's what you kind of threatened us with after we told you we weren't going to resign for 6 figures. So the city worked backward to kind of just make him a scapegoat for.
Well, and I'll say it was like, the investigation it's also public because due to California law, it's like there was dishonesty allegations, so it's public information. So if anyone wants to read it, you can read it and make your own decisions. But they never interviewed the subject that I arrested. They never interviewed his friends that were there. They never interviewed. They did interview the other officers that were with me. They all corroborated everything that I said. They all backed up everything that I did. The senior officer there even said that, she would have done the same thing, all these things.
Yeah.
And then, so the dishonesty stuff came out of left field for me because I just was never anticipating that at all. And then even when it did come up, I defended it and felt really good. Like, okay, they're checking the box. Like, this is stuff that they have to ask me. This is what they're going to attack. But I was like, and I knew, I was like, not only I know it's in my heart, but I'm like, there's absolutely no evidence of any dishonesty. And there's like, to me, it was so far-fetched that they could even say that I was dishonest or make a point to say that. So, but that's what, came out. They essentially had those findings. So that was, in July, I believe. But it was about 6 weeks, 7 weeks later. So then I was terminated. I essentially stayed on for another 6 months on admin leave
while
I appealed the termination.
Okay. Yeah.
So then I had to go through like the city admin process. So my actual termination wasn't until like December. And then we had a panel of 5 citizens make that determination. So that's another California thing. Citizen like review boards and citizen panels and stuff like that. So they had 5 citizens that don't have any law enforcement background.
Is this like civil service? Do you guys call it civil service or something else?
It's called a personnel appeals board.
Yeah.
So usually most cities will handle it through like they'll have like a third party arbitrator that does these professionally and like does these like for LE agencies and stuff like that. So they know like case law, they know that kind of stuff. But this is within the city, it's 5 citizens.
Well, and it's 5 citizens, publicly named, no background in law enforcement, and these are residents of La Mesa, right? So that means they were on the front lines the night the city burned down, and they're being presumably fed this narrative from the media, from social justice groups, internally from the city, right? These are people on this panel are hand appointed by, I don't know, the mayor, the city manager, the same people who told us like, well, even if your use of force is good, we'll come after you for PC. So it's like, this is not an unbiased group, and their threshold again is that preponderance of evidence. So
then the city also hired, like, it was obviously like, and I will say like this again and again, it still is, it's been a battle of resources, right?
Yeah.
There's, as a police officer, we are represented by PORAC LDF. So that's like our legal foundation that funds like our cases and stuff like that when we have these types of issues. So like I had an attorney through that process who was awesome, but so the city went out and they hired a big law firm to take on the case for them. So the city attorney didn't handle it. So then they hired the managing partner at this law firm that's like a nationwide law firm to just handle my case specifically.
That's telling.
So he came in and did this whole big song and dance, theatrics in front of the citizens about, various types of things. The citizens had their findings, and it was like, we knew that how these normally go, but I knew that everything needs to be on the record, to be put in the record for our appeal, because I knew the next step after this was that it was going to have to go to a judge, which is kind of where we're at. So at the end of 2020,
that's where you're at right now.
Yeah. So at the end of 20,
yes, but like obviously the criminal case put a hold on that, right?
Well, so I'm curious. So I'm asking you to explain that more. But like so you're still waiting for the judge to decide, a judge to decide.
Yeah. So what'll happen is, so in the beginning of so we filed my reinstatement hearing. We have like another step. It's like now it goes to the court. Like it's left the city's hands, and now it goes. The courts are going to determine. So basically, it'll go in front of a judge in the next couple of months. I think April 1st or something like that is the date.
Okay.
And there's like it's all this legal stuff. It's like it goes in front of a judge. A judge makes a decision at a hearing, and then we kind of figure out where we're at from there. So that termination from the city happened in December of 2020, and then December 31st, 2020, I got a call from my attorney, and it was like, hey, they're the DA, and she was like frantically calling me and texting me. She's like, call me now. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? So I called her back, and she's like, she was emotional on the phone when I talked to her, and she's like, the DA is charging you the felony for falsifying a police report. And I remember just like breaking down, because I was like, what the hell is going on? Yeah. And immediately my thought was like, they don't know everything. I'm like, I was like, we have to get them all the information, like my hearing stuff that we had with the city, like we have to get them all the testimony that we did, because we did like a 2-week hearing with the city. I was like, we have to get them all the testimony. I was like, there's no way they have everything. They don't have enough evidence. They don't have it all. Like they don't know the whole picture. They did. And
to kind of paint a picture of like the political scene down here, like what led that charge to even be filed is like, we have a district attorney who's up for re-election this year, who was voted into office by police unions, by Republicans. She gets elected, I think in 2018, immediately renounces her Republican affiliation.
In 2020.
And I think, with what's happening up in LA County, right, the writing's kind of been on the wall with like more progressive DAs. And I think The DA here in San Diego, Summer Stephan, I think is more concerned about political survivalhood and getting votes in her reelection campaign this year than she is about, actual facts of the case. So I think initially we were just like, oh, the DA doesn't have the full picture. Like we should be able to get this all sorted out. Very quickly became apparent they have the full picture, and they were coming after Matthew with everything that they had, not because he did anything wrong, but because they just wanted to kind of like appeal to those like middle of the road voters and to show like, oh, look, we're progressive, we prosecute cops. And it's like, by all means, prosecute cops when there's actual wrongdoing, but how dare you slander us, come after my husband, hold our lives hostage for a year while we battle this out in court, just so that you can look really good to social justice groups.
So they gave you that news on the 31st, and you said you broke down. And the reason why I want to bring you back to that day is because there are people who are going through this too, like where they get news from DAs or IA or whatever, losing their job. And I know that since you've gone through this, is there anything that you can shed light on that day, like what you went through, that you can, I don't know how you processed it. Like you broke down, but like how you get out of that? Like I imagine a darkness, but I don't know what it looks like for you, but how do you get out of that? And so what did you do?
It was so hard because it was like, that was most of 2021. Like I thought 2020 was bad. And I was like, there was so much trauma and selling our home and watching these riots and getting terminated and doing all this and fighting for my life. But 2021 was definitely the hardest year.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing like going through like a criminal case, it's like state of California versus Matthew Dages, and it's like that, there's nothing harder than that. And I can't say that it's like, I don't have anything to say as far as like, how do you pick yourself up, because I think you have to go through the emotions of like this different stages of like grief
yeah.
and, trauma and work your way up. And then finally you just have to pick yourself up. Yeah. We leaned on our faith a lot.
Yeah.
We had a great support system here with our family. We had people that like believed in us. And I think at that point, it was like, I know that was the turning point for us, because once the criminal charges took place, it was like, okay, we're no longer staying silent. Like we're going to do everything we can.
Yeah.
To make noise here.
And so everything he said is 100% correct. And if I could just add to that, I think for anyone in similar circumstances, I understand how crippling that news is at first, and certainly take your time, process it, lean on your support systems, your faith. But what we learned, and what I wish we would have known sooner, is like, when you're up against these, whether it's like local, state governments with endless resources, they want to sweep you under the rug, right? They want you to play small and be quiet. And my advice to other police families going through this is like, process whatever you need to process, and then pick up your sword and shield and go to war, because like you have to figuratively like battle these people, these politicians, these prosecutors on every street corner about everything, like make their lives a living hell,
right.
Fight them in every way you can. Because they don't want the pushback, and they also don't want the publicity. Like with the moment we started speaking out, we became the biggest thorn in the side for this progressive DA who was elected into office by police unions. And then she has a police wife speaking out against her. And, we've got this social media following. So that's my advice, is like, once you kind of process it, like battle up. It's war. And it's going to be like the most painful experience of your life, but like, it's your life on the line. So you've just got to, get in there and fight like hell.
How long did it take you to decide to do that? I mean, because you're saying you would automatically, now like you would probably maybe we do it earlier or later, but
by the time we started speaking up, it was, I don't know, like
April, March.
Yeah, so almost a year after his incident, right? And his incident happened, it got so big so fast, we just got small and kind of focused on survival. And it took us almost a full year to be like, oh, no, we've got to like fight fire with fire if we're going to win this.
Do you feel like there's a difference? Sorry, I don't know.
No, you're good.
Oh, do you feel there's a difference, like when you're saying, because you went through the admin part of it, the IA stuff, and then like talking to the panel, all the stuff. So you really didn't, what was it, December you found out you lost your job?
Well, that was like the official like termination. Yeah, sometimes.
Do you feel like it's different though? Like if you would have started fighting publicly earlier while that process was going on, that it would change that? Or do you think that it was smart not to fight at that time? Because I mean, I don't know. Because I know people who are like admin, you're always worried like saying too much. Oh, if I say too much, then the admin's gonna just like cut me now.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, we definitely, if we had started earlier, maybe, maybe to change the narrative. Cause like, once we started speaking out and like getting stuff, it was a slow process, but like, then it started to build over 2021. And it was like, it became bigger than we kind of expected. It was like, she started getting on the news, like locally, or doing like different podcasts, like LE podcasts. And we started meeting people. We started getting like these connections of like politicians or LE people or people that had foundations and stuff like that, giving us a platform. And then before we knew it, like by the end of like going into trial, it was like she would look at Instagram and there'd be like 100,000 accounts we'd be reaching in like 2 weeks or something like that.
That's amazing.
And it was insane. It was like, so we were like the viewership that we were getting, the people following, it was like, so that was for us, like for me, that was super uplifting because we were getting so much support after for so long getting no support. But then to hear all these people speaking up, and then through 2021 was kind of like, the pendulum is obviously not swung back, but to have people be like, okay, it's kind of gotten ridiculous. Right. Like, you know what I mean? Like this anti-police stuff, defund the police.
And now crime is surging. It's like, what are you doing?
So you see,
I was curious about your DA too, when you're saying that they were trying to switch the other way. Are they switching back now? I mean,
no, they're not. There's like all this, there's just crazy stuff. It's just Southern California in general is like madness right now. Yeah. But
so fighting earlier, you're not sure if it would have changed anything necessarily.
I don't know that it would change the outcome of like his appeals hearing, but I think more so like our goal in speaking out is like, there needs to be more in the LA community. There needs to be more awareness that like these bureaucracies are designed and structured in a way to do this to families like us, which means it could happen to families like you. It could happen to families like your listeners. Right. And it's more so like speaking out, getting that awareness. I think we're all better equipped for like what to expect when there's an IA over a very public, incident. And I think just the law enforcement community being better connected with one another, like social media is a great tool for that. These podcasts are really wonderful, because through that connection, like you gain like people, and like, it's just, there's influences, there's resources that come out of that we can like back each other up, and talking about these shared experiences, I think helps prevent them from happening in the future. Right. When we all have knowledge and we're all equipped with like how to prevent these things from happening to each other. So
I just wish that like more, like say political leaders, but like chiefs of different agencies. So let's say your agency can't say anything, fine. But if let's say other agencies go, hey, this is what we believe, and like then the leaderships start speaking up more, just to show support of the officers. I don't know. I guess that's my biggest hang up for a while now. It's been the leadership not being able to speak up. I think there was the ones we were thanked for, we had to pursue. We were thanked for not getting into a shooting at the end. The guy had a gun. And we're kind of thanked by the chief for not getting into a shooting. I mean, there was no reason to get into a shooting. It didn't turn in that way, but it was thankful. And I said, I'm curious, when we've had shootings, when there have been officer involved shootings, and they're justified telling officers they did a good job, publicly. So we can't do that. We can't do that because then if it turns out that the DA changes their mind, that's not good, then we're wrong. And I'm like, that's so backwards.
Well, you see, there is leaders that do that. There's definitely, you see like sheriffs in like Florida and stuff like that come out and they're like, they have their deputies' backs and stuff like that. There is leadership.
I'm not saying everybody. I shouldn't say everyone.
No, but it's definitely a huge thing because in LA, like, you really see, especially when there's pressure on like these, like the leadership, you really see what they're made of in like a big way, because they all present themselves in like this, like, oh, chief, like, I talk a lot of big words, but they don't really mean anything. Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And, but when they're actually pressured to make decisions or do their job and like really stand up for why they're there, right? Like you worked your whole career to be a chief, and it's like, you would think that more chiefs would want to look after their officers and really take care of them, in a real sense, not just like, hey, we're doing a pizza party thing. You know what I mean?
Why is pizza always a thing too?
It's so funny.
Cheapest way to feed everybody is to get some pizza. And then we did something.
We got a pizza. There's like, morale sucks. We got bagels today are coming or something. That's how it is for every department.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny.
Yeah.
It's like pizza parties.
Hey, we're happy. That's fine. All free food. But yeah, so the leadership's a big thing for me now. Seeing like that's like the biggest thing is, you know, seeing agencies that have strong leadership that stand behind their officers, that stand behind like doing police work, like and just that really like that are accountable. Like the buck stops with them. Like at the end of the day,
I really want to see a change here in California. Like it needs to change. I mean, the DAs are. I think the political leaders are really causing some real issues for policing, and we can't.
Well, I know there's like Sheriff Villanueva's pushing hard. I know that Sheriff Bianco's pushing hard in Riverside, and those guys are like two of the biggest standout leaders. It comes to also like make a point that they're both sheriffs and they're elected, so they don't not appointed. Yeah. They don't have to answer to a city council, and that's probably the biggest difference, right?
Yeah. And as a police wife, if I could just interject and say that like that was stuff we did not pay attention to or realize before this incident, and those factors absolutely matter when you're looking at how a department might handle a critical incident that has a lot of publicity. And so one of the key takeaways that I've learned from this situation is, like Matthew just said, sheriff's departments versus city police departments, and how the leaders of sheriff's departments are elected versus appointed like they are in a city police department. And those police chiefs in a city department report to city manager, city mayor, city council. And so, you know, if you're lateraling to a different agency, if you're brand new and you're trying to pick which agency to belong to, pay attention to like the political powers at play. If you are looking at a city PD that has a city council that has anti-cop people on it, I would say get as far away from those agencies as possible, because our case is a glaring example and warning for police families that those anti-cop city council members, they control the puppet strings. Yeah. And your life and your livelihood is at risk if you are just doing your job and you do a justified low-level use of force. Those city council members are going to crucify you as whatever fits their narrative: a racist cop, police brutality, police misconduct, you know? So that's a really big takeaway that I think I didn't realize as a police wife, and maybe other families don't realize. Like, those are things you have to pay attention to survive.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And the fact that like you were looking at the agency when you first started, people were kind of telling you to go there, and you were like, you wanted to be there because of probably the leadership and what was going on in the department, but you didn't really know the backbone of it was city council. You know, it's not just the police department you have to look at.
Well, it's the city, you know, the city council plays a big role, but also like, it is like, it's really like kind of like a Wizard of Oz thing, right? They project one thing and then you see behind the curtain, you're like, oh man, like this is what's really, and you don't know that until you're there. Right. You don't really know that until you're there.
That's good. Now
you don't know
like that Wizard of Oz.
I know. I've never heard that you say that before.
You don't know like the morale until you're there, and then you really find out like, or you're really working, like you can, because like when you're doing like trying to find out where you want to go, you're doing ride-alongs and stuff like that. You don't know until you're working it, until you really see like what's popping off inside the station, you know. And
everyone acts like they're friendly and everything's good to go when you get there, and like they're recruiting you, and then what happens after? Yeah, what happens the week after you start? You know? Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm just thinking about how you were. Obviously now you're still fighting, but at the time going through this, and you were clearly selected for a SWAT team, and you had a good head on your shoulders. You're working hard. You're busting your ass, and then one thing happens and everyone turns against you. Did you feel like, I mean, after you were terminated in December, did you feel that you had any support from the people within your department, or were they kind of just like, I'm going to put my distance because of what happened?
The patrol guys, I definitely had a lot of support from, and there's still like guys that I talk to on a regular basis and that have my back. I know that, you know, when we started our social media page, it was like we had a lot of support from guys even within the department across the county, like, you know, like different departments across the county, supporting us. You know, we have like buying shirts and like putting them in the locker rooms and doing stuff like that. That was cool.
Plug that right now. We're thinking to buy this. Does shirts go to helping you for your legal funds?
Oh right? Yeah. So our social media account is on Facebook and Instagram. It's Clear Officer Dages. It's DAGES, and the link in bio will not only take you to where you can buy our Clear Officer Dages shirts, which are super soft and really great, but there's also a donation link there as well. So, you know, one of the other kind of cautionary tales about our story is that like police unions cover legal fees to a certain degree. At the end of the day, like they have discretion in what they cover. And so that ultimately has led to us having to pay over $100,000 out of pocket in legal fees. And this is during a time when Matthew's been out of a job now for over a year. And so that's another thing I want police families to know is, you know, like that your police union has your back to a certain degree. They're not going to necessarily pay for everything. And so, so we've, you know, paid a lot of money out of pocket just to advance his criminal case, to advance his reinstatement case, just to stay in the fight. It costs resources and money. So we've teamed up with the Pipettor Foundation, which is an amazing organization that was founded by Eddie and Andrea Gallagher. And they've been helping us fundraise and pound the drum. So our social media is kind of the gateway for all those wonderful ways that people can stand with us and help us kind of win this fight.
Yeah. So we had, and like, there's like a big, like, if you've never been in an IA or you've never been in like, I mean, not many officers, a lot of officers are going to be in IAs, but not many of them are going to get into like a criminal trial, right? Or go that distance or be terminated. So it's like your police unions and all that are great because you know, you have an IA, they'll have representation come out and like do an interview with you and do that kind of stuff. They'll be there. That's totally always going to be covered. You're not going to have any problem with that. But it's like, once you go to the step of like, oh, you're getting criminally charged and, oh, you're getting terminated. And it's like all these other things, you know, you have to, I think at one point it's like, I had like 3 or 4 attorneys and,
this is from from the association, 3 or 4 attorneys.
No, I had one. Well, no. So, I mean, I had one attorney from the association, and then we were in this position where it was like I said, like the DA has this, the government has a blank check, right? And they're going to throw as many resources as they can. Like they had multiple DAs working my case for a year, and God knows how many hundreds of thousands of dollars they spent, if not millions of dollars, between the criminal case and the admin case. But it was like, once we went to trial and there was like, or going into trial and knowing, hey, this is a case that needs more than one attorney. Like we need, like, it's just more work than one attorney can possibly handle, especially because like a police attorney is also getting called out to other cases. You know what I mean?
To OISs.
They're not just devoted to you, obviously. Yeah. So we had to bring on other attorneys on the team. And it was just like, we were in that state where I was like, you'll do anything when you're in this position where it's like in a criminal trial, it's like you need to do whatever it takes to win.
Right. And so one of the things we haven't touched on is like, had Matthew been found guilty, they were charging this as a felony. So not only was he facing prison time, but like in terms of our lives after that as a newlywed couple, that's like no voting, can't own a firearm. Like this is like life crippling stuff that we're up against. And we're walking into court every day with our one attorney against the DA's 5 or whatever they had. And so, yeah, we were in a position where we were just like, we need more firepower. Like, this is the fight of our lives. This is literally the difference between us winning in court and being able to start a family and move forward with our lives, or Matthew going to prison and I don't have, we can't start a family and he can't vote and he can't own a firearm. And I don't know how he's going to work again after this. Right. And so the disparity between those two outcomes lights a fire under your ass. And we were just like, we have to mobilize funds. We have to get more attorneys, more firepower, because like I said, it was the fight of our lives.
What kept you going? I mean, okay, so that what you just mentioned, like I feel like that could cripple anybody.
Yes.
Like that could really like tear you, like feel crippling. So what like okay, you decided from like, okay, I'm not gonna go right, I'm gonna go left, and this fire is gonna burn. I don't know if there's something specific, like, or you're just like, we're doing this, we're going all out.
I mean, it's like you're backed into a corner, and it's like you have to make a choice of like, am I going to? And I think that's what the DA's intention was, or a combination of. And that's just me speculating, a combination of maybe the DA and the city's intention of charging me criminally was, we're gonna bury him. Like we want to bury him publicly, financially, do whatever he can, because we know this isn't a good case. And if we bury him and push him in a place where he has nowhere to go, he's going to plea to something less, because they gave me multiple chances to do that. And every time I told them to kick rocks, and it's like absolutely not going to happen. Or they're just going to try to destroy me as much as they possibly could. But you have to make a decision internally in your own mind and be like, you work so like like this is like, it's a life-changing decision you have to make in yourself to be like, am I going to give everything that I have here, or am I done? Like, am I done? And my attorney told me, like, when we got charged, like we had a conversation with her, and she's like, look, she's like, I know how you feel right now, and I know you want to attack this head on, but she's like, I've been through so many trials with people. Like, it's the hardest thing in your life you'll ever face. And she's like, there's nothing wrong with if you wanted to say that. And she's like, I believe you 100%. I know, she's like, I know you, like, I know that you're right. But if you were to say, hey, like, let's make a deal and like, let's just end this because it's not worth the turmoil that your life's going to go through over the next year. She's like, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it's like, we're going pedal to the, like, you know, we're full speed ahead. Like, it's not,
you knew you did nothing wrong. So knowing
that
that
was the biggest thing.
It's like, I would like, I didn't do anything wrong. And that's why it's always interesting people like take pleas.
If I had, if I had done something wrong, if I knew in my heart where I did something, even if I knew something in my heart where I was like, you know, I really messed up or I did something wrong. It's like, why wouldn't I have taken the several $100,000 they offered me immediately and left?
Right.
And B, it's like, then I would know like, oh man, eventually the truth's going to come out and like, I'm going to get screwed and I'm going to be found guilty. But it was like, I always knew that I did the right thing, that there was nothing to hide and I had nothing to hide. And it was like, you know, that's what ended up coming out. The trial was just a circus, you know?
Oh my gosh. I think going into trial one, like he said, seeing like state of California versus Matthew Dages is just like horrifying. I'm sure for him, certainly for me, his parents, our siblings, our friends. And you kind of just have I had this expectation going into trial, like, well, these are their big guns and this is going to be a big show. And it was an absolute circus for the prosecution. I mean, that makes sense now in hindsight because they had no case, right? It's all the smoke and mirror stuff, but just watching their case like fall further and further apart every day and watching us win every single day in court. Very early on, we chose a really good jury and really very early on in the process, I started to feel like, oh my God, like we've got this, which I did not expect because I just thought, and I mean, I want to be very clear, trial was the most agonizing experience of our lives. It felt like we describe it as like a hellfire acid bath, and that is almost an understatement. But like when you actually watch the substance of the case play out, there was no smoking gun. There was no like skeleton in the closet. Like nothing happened in trial where we were like, shoot, that was bad. Like if anything, the DA's witnesses like would just absolutely crumble on the stand, and we would just be like, oh my God, that was wonderful for us, you know? So.
How long did it go for the trial?
Like
2 weeks.
About
almost.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Almost 2 weeks. Yeah. So then between like jury selection, pre-trial motions, like trial itself, and then deliberations, it was like a full 2 weeks essentially. But the jury deliberated for like a little over barely a day and had a verdict. And we felt like,
and spoiler, it was not guilty for
not
anyone.
guilty.
Amen.
I don't know if we said that already, but you're found not guilty.
It was like, you know, we felt good about it, but like you hear, like, it's just like the most intense, like 30 seconds of your life for them reading a verdict, and you feel good about it, but at the same time, nothing good has happened to you over the last year and a half. And like, you feel like the system has let you down and people have let you down continuously. People that you trusted or people in power have let you down. So you're always like, what if, you know? But we were so happy. And like the jury, like, you know, the people were just come to find out, because we got to talk to the jury afterwards.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, if they wanted to, some came up and spoke to our family members.
Some people came up, like shook my hand afterwards.
The foreman came up and shook Matthew's hand, and he learned that Matthew was facing prison time over this charge, and he was like appalled. And so we actually got to communicate with several jurors, and it was really interesting because when they went into deliberation, the foreman immediately was like, okay, guys, the elephant in the room is like, does this case have anything to do with race? And the jury immediately was like, no, right? Because that's, as the prosecution's case played out in court and all the witnesses were a disaster and they have no evidence, like then their Hail Mary in court was all they did was race bait. And they said George Floyd's name more times during trial than I think they said Matthew Dages' name.
That's
which is
insane.
just sickening and so just heartbreaking to see them be that desperate, but to also have the race card just keep coming out, and then to hear the jury say, no, that was the first thing we addressed as a jury, and we all agreed this had nothing to do with race.
So clear here. So they're saying that Matthew's actions and his arrest had nothing to do with race.
Yeah.
But the trial, or the fact that he was fired, clearly had to do with race.
Well, so
the fact that
there was never, the race stuff was never ever brought up in like my IA, nothing, like it never, there was never anything to do with any race. And then
Well,
obviously that was like the undertone of the situation, right?
Right.
But there was never any accusations of any racial like targeting or anything like that. And then even in the criminal case, there was no accusations, but that was what they continued to bring. The DA continued to play on that tone of like, well, let's remember where we were on May 25th, 2020, when George Floyd, I'm like,
George
what's going
Floyd,
on?
who is black, just like the subject in the case is black, and then the officer who's white, just like Matthew Dages is white. They literally spelled that out in court. And I understand that, like, no, on paper, he wasn't criminally charged with being racist. He wasn't fired for being racist, but like both the criminal charge and the termination were driven by allegations of dishonesty. And then you've got this very loud social justice group who's kind of filling in that gap and saying that his motivation was racism. So no, it's not written on a legal document anywhere, but like racially charged is really what fueled this entire nightmare for us. That allegation of Matthew's actions being racially charged, like that's that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I just think the comparison is unbelievable. Like,
well, they literally compared it.
What's that?
They literally compared me to Derek Chauvin, like not literally actually did that in the trial. And I was like, I turned to my attorney and I was like,
can they do this?
I was like, can they say that? And he's like, they can say whatever they want.
But at the end of the day, so just to kind of give you a lay of the land here in San Diego, so East County is technically where La Mesa is considered, and that area is like very conservative, very pro-police, very patriotic, and that's where this trial was held. And so we picked a jury from East County, who was, I think almost everyone we interviewed for the jury had like law enforcement ties. Like we picked a really, really great jury. And at the end of the day, when the prosecution so desperately tried to play the race card in court, comparing him to the Minneapolis thing, and Matthew asked his attorney, like, are they allowed to do that? I think our strategy was like, no, let them. The jury is going to hate this.
Yeah, my attorney's like, just let them talk. Like they sound ridiculous. Like, let them talk.
And when we spoke to the jury after the acquittal, that's exactly what several members said, was like, they agree. It was like this whole charades about race when this case has nothing to do with race.
Right.
And they all agree that like the DA, the city of La Mesa, is just railroading Matthew for political gain, right? Because they had a city burned down and the DA has an election campaign this year and they wanted to, appease this woke, ignorant mob and try and throw Matthew under the bus. So vindicating on a lot of different levels for us.
Yeah. Oh, I just make it clear. One of the things you said we picked our jury, the jury that we picked, but this is both sides. So you
Absolutely.
Go back and forth. I know you cleared this up on the other podcast too, but I just want to be clear for anyone's listening. So you guys go back and forth. You can dismiss people, and so can the DA. And DA can pick the jury just as much as you guys. Your side can.
Each side gets 10 dismissals, right? So it's like we have 10 dismissals, the DA has 10 dismissals, and it's called voir dire for anyone who doesn't know, but like through that process of the jury selection, like the DA and the defense attorney like essentially interview the jurors, find out like their background. It's really like anything, like what do you like to do? Like what do you do on your spare time? Like or then it turns into like, how do you feel about this subject? How do you feel about this? And then you find out people, maybe if anyone's like, how do they feel about law enforcement? Have they had any prior interactions with law enforcement? And some people were like, so like, I love law enforcement. Like some people, you have people on both ends of the spectrum, right? You have people that are like super pro law enforcement, and you have some people that are obviously not pro law enforcement. Yeah. So essentially what happens is like, there's always like a kind of like a meeting in the middle, some people are gonna, because it does even out. It's a fair process for everyone.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear because I know that you were saying like the jury we got, which is true. Like you got a good jury, which on both sides was chosen, and they could have kicked off any of those people if they wanted to. So
yeah, and also the judge has power to. There's like people that obviously have bias, like they maybe feel so strongly about a case because my case was being public, so a lot of people knew about the case when they saw me. Like they'd come in, they didn't know what trial they were going to be at, but when they showed up and saw me, they recognized me. And some people felt so strongly one way or the other. There was actually people that like felt strongly in favor of me that the judge dismissed them. So it's like, those are people that I'd love to have on the jury, obviously, right? But the judge dismisses them because they feel like they can't be neutral. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you get through the trial, and it was all televised, the whole thing.
Yeah. So yeah, it was. So there was every day it was just.
I know you're doing updates like. Christina, I think you're on Instagram doing updates like after each day or a couple of days, or was it deliberations?
as much as I could, but the reality is like trial was such a grind. We'd get there at 7 a.m. We'd be there until like 5 or 6. We live kind of far from the courthouse. We'd come home. You're just so mentally and emotionally and just spiritually drained. So you have enough time to like shove something down your throat for food and then go to sleep and wake up at like 6 or 5 a.m. and do it all over again. So I was updating as much as I possibly could. The media, it was a public trial. Anyone could attend. The media televised every single day. But one thing that's really interesting to note is like the media, of course, was there to tape like the prosecution's witnesses, the main subject in Matthew's case. Like they would tape him and then they would like leave at certain parts of the day when like the rest of the trial like didn't fit their narrative. And they would like be there to close. They would be there to film the prosecution's closing arguments. And then literally when the prosecution was done, the media packed up their stuff and left and didn't even film Matthew's attorney's Matthew's attorney's closing. And we can all guess why, right? It's because like the facts that we're saying, our argument does not fit the media's narrative. So they're not going to televise it. And so that was really eye-opening to me because I was like, the media is not here. They don't care about the truth. They are not here to televise this full thing. They're cherry picking what fits their like anti-cop narrative.
They'd get their clip in the morning and then they'd bounce like, and then you just see like one clip that was like taken out of context or something like that. And then it was funny because I'm sure like because like we had so many support people, we had so much support there too. It was like, because it's a public trial. Anyone can show up and watch. So we had like, probably 50 plus people there every day, like packed the courthouse. And it was like people that were there watching, you'd go home and read the news and be like, what? Like, this is nothing. You're missing like 95% of what happened that day.
I think it's interesting because we've seen this on the media for quite a while now. Like the media only shows like one side of things and changes the tone of things to make, especially law enforcement, look bad. But to hear firsthand, even like you said, like you're sitting there and they're packing up. I don't think we really kind of picture that because you only see what's on TV, right? So you're seeing what they show and you're like, all right, what's the other story? Well, maybe they didn't get the other story. No, they chose to leave to not hear the other side of the story. That's, I don't know, boggles my mind. But
so then, when we had the verdict, there was like 20 plus news. It was insane. It was like, I was like, there's not even this many news stations in the city. There was so many cameras and they were all asking for a statement. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to talk to anyone, but I'm like, why would I talk to you guys?
Our position as a family is like these media outlets locally, with the exception of one, KUSI has been wonderful to us, but every other media outlet has really just kind of taken this like clickbait headline BS and like ran with it and drug his name through the mud for 2 years now. And then when he gets vindicated and they're like, oh, will you talk to us? And it's like, why would we do you any favors? We have nothing to say to you. Because I really think as a police family, like it's important to really pay attention to like who's actually presenting the news to the community and who's really pushing an agenda, because those are very different things.
So what made you, I know you were speaking out before because you're trying to get eyes on the case and what's going on with everything. So what changed for you now, Matthew, going to be able to speak up a little more? Like, did something change for you?
Well, once the criminal case was done, that was the big thing. Is like, once the criminal case was done, it was like, and at this point, it's like, I've, the reinstatement is still pending, right? But I have so many hours of like, so if you break it down, like in the IA interrogation, I testified, I did 5 hours in that interrogation room with
how long it lasted?
5 hours for a 3-minute incident. Yeah. And then I did in front of the city, like admin panel, I did like 7 hours of testimony. And then I also testified in my own trial for like 5 hours. So it's like, I have said so much at this point under oath, like officially, I've talked about every single second of this. I have nothing to hide. And I know, like, I'm not going to say anything crazy. Like, my attorneys know I'm not going to say anything crazy or out there. Like, it's just not, I have no skeletons. Like, I have nothing to hide from anyone.
There's nothing you can say now that's going to even, because you already said it all. Yeah.
So I know.
I don't think I knew that you testified. So 5 hours?
Yeah, it was like, they did like, direct. My attorney did probably like an hour and a half or a little over an hour and a half. And then the cross-examination was like 3.5 hours or something like that of testimony.
So I've been cross-examined a couple of times. I think the hardest part is remaining calm. Like when you're like, not calm, but you know what I mean? We're just like, you're like, I want to be kind of argument. Like I'm trying to prove my point that I did something correct. So was there difficulty, or was there anything you had to go through like in that mindset of like, hey, like just deal with the questions no matter how like negative they are towards you?
Well, yeah. So like, other police officers, like I'm sure if anyone that's a cop, like you've testified in prelims or trials or whatever. And, it's, most of the time it's like, you're up there for like 10 minutes. Right. And, sometimes you get in front of a defense attorney, because it's all, it's usually a defense attorney that's going to give you a hard time. The DA is usually the one working with you.
Right.
And, I tell people, I'm like, when you're testifying as a cop, sometimes with the defense, you can kind of like throw stuff back. You can kind of be like, you can dish it back.
You can be firm.
You can be firm with them, and you can also dish it back, because they're going to try to like poke at you. They want to like do stuff, and it's like whatever. You're just going to be honest. In this,
because you're on the other side of the law.
Correct. Yeah,
right.
yeah. So in this situation, I had to
be composed.
That was the biggest thing. Like my attorneys were like, because all they wanted to do was to make me look like a jerk. That's all they wanted to do. So I just had to make sure that, and I was honest, obviously, like, but I just was myself. And like, I, again, had nothing to hide, but you had to like be very aware that the jury is watching you, like not only when you're testifying, but when you're sitting there at the table. Like every time someone would come up and testify and say something, it was like they were just looking back for your reaction. The jury was. So you have, no matter if someone's like lying, like people were blatantly just, lying essentially, or just saying ridiculous stuff, you can't have a reaction. You can't like throw your hands up. You can't like huff and puff, because it's not a good look, and you want to stay composed. You just want to sit there, and just, take it in and do that kind of thing. But yeah, it's definitely hard when the DA is trying to get a rise out of you. But at the same time, when they're nitpicking certain stuff, it's like they're doing it because they have no fact, like they have no evidence.
Right.
They have nothing against you. So, and like I said, like I had testified so much at that point, it was like I had nothing to hide. Like, and it was like everything's on video. So it was like we'd pull up video and like, we're watching the same thing, like, and not only are we watching it, but the jury's watching it. So it's like, are you telling us that all of our eyes are like incorrect here, in what we're looking at?
Did you, when you're sitting there composed, like not even in the jury box, but when you're not jury box, the stand, when you're sitting there behind the table, try not to react to the people go on the stand. I feel like, I don't know, this is my guess, but would you feel like they can like read your thoughts? Like when you're thinking, like no matter like you're on your face, I feel like my facial expression would just show, no matter what I was thinking.
Yeah. They, I'm sure that they could. And it was like, there was my attorneys were like, some reactions were okay, but like, you cannot like, you just want to stay like kind of focused and like look straight ahead. And but yeah, I mean,
you did that in the academy. I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. You do
dig into that, get back to that mindset of just like, I'm just going to stare off into space.
Yeah, exactly. But it's hard, especially when it's like your life's on the line. People are like saying ridiculous stuff, and you're just like sitting there kind of gritting your teeth and trying to just put a good face on. I mean, you don't want to laugh or do anything like that. No. You want to look like a genuine, you want to be genuine, you want to be composed, and you want to be, you want to represent yourself well.
I can imagine. Yeah. That just going through that, I can imagine it. And then would they tell you anything else, Christina, too? Like, would they tell you to act a certain way, or no? It was just,
I was kind of back in the galley where everyone else was. And you're kind of very limited back there. You're not allowed to like nod your head or like make noises at all. So no, I don't really think anyone cared that I was back there. But I will just say, watching him, I mean, because I wasn't at his IA, but I was at the admin hearing. So I watched him testify then. I watched him testify in trial. And it's like, I don't think I've ever loved him more than I did in those moments, because I knew the pressure, the fire that he was under. And his story has just never wavered. It's never changed. And I know what's in his heart. And I was just so proud of him in those moments, because he was literally like staring down the devil, and he won, and he did so good. And it's like the truth really prevailed in our case. So it was just a very proud moment for me as a police wife.
No, I bet. I was really happy to see, obviously, the outcome. I didn't watch the testimony. I mean, but I think I just kind of like got on your radar at the end of the trial, when the trial's finishing. And it was interesting. I didn't know that it was even happening, and I'm in Southern California, which was kind of weird. And then I'm seeing like how much is out there and just trying to push it out. I think like just get more focused on what you guys are trying to do now to get you back to work and get you back higher with the department.
Yeah, that's the goal this year.
So you ended the trial in December.
December
So
10th.
So a year of from you lose your job, and then
a year later we went on trial. Yeah.
It's a crazy year. I can't imagine going through that.
Well, because the big thing that also is like through the year of like leading up to trial, it's like the DA is like doing their work on the case, and they just keep like piling discovery, like coming with evidence or new interviews. So you're constantly getting hit with like more stuff, like more and more. So the whole year it's like you're just waiting to go to trial and eventually hit it, but it's like a big buildup. But yeah, to be on this end of it, it's obviously we're just overjoyed. And
we talk about it. It's like we're humans again. Like the entire year leading up to trial, you are not human. You are not eating, or you're eating without like tasting. You're not like living. You're respirating, but you're not like breathing. And it's just like, now that we're on the other side of this, I'm like, how did we do that? Because it's just like agony has been redefined. And so just now I feel like just normal things are so much sweeter. Like being able to go to the grocery store and just walk around and not have this horrible cloud over us, or this like heaviness in our heart, or just waking up every morning in our beds and just like being able to like breathe and know that we're not staring down the barrel of a gun, of prison time and, criminal charges. It's just incredible. I feel like we're human again,
Mm-hmm.
You said you were locals, like in La Mesa. You would go to the same grocery stores and stuff, like kind of probably where you were doing enforcement.
Oh yeah. All the time.
So how was that? I was gonna ask earlier, I thought when you brought it up, but how was that just walking around out of uniform and then in uniform? Did people recognize you? Did you know the community both in and out of uniform?
Like when I was working?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I basically we did all of our, we went to all of our dinners, like everything, restaurants, gas, like everything, went to Costco, all that stuff within the same city that I worked at. Right. So, I never got recognized out of uniform. But you would see people that I'm like, oh, I just stopped that guy like yesterday. You know what I mean? So you see people, but I also feel like it's interesting because from the public's perspective, I tell her all the time, you would never, a cop in uniform and out of uniform, it's so hard to differentiate, especially a civilian. Yeah. You would almost never, even if you just saw them 12 hours earlier, you would almost never recognize them because you associate them with the uniform so much that to see them wearing a t-shirt and a hat and flip-flops, you wouldn't know it.
Again, they only see the uniform, or most of the time they see the uniform.
Exactly.
Unless you have a person. I think after several years, you can have a pretty good relationship with different people.
For sure.
Recognize you. Even people you might stop on a regular basis, and they know who you are. The
regular transient people and stuff like that. But
so I was curious if that ever came across your dad. So then would you stay out of the city while you were going through all of this?
Yeah, we moved.
Yeah.
So we're still
in the city.
We moved out of that. We're still in San Diego, but we definitely moved, and I just avoid it now. I don't remember the last time I was in that city, to be honest with you, just because it's hard for us. It's it's out of the way now for us too, but there's obviously a lot of emotions there. So.
And so now you're waiting for the judge for your case to get hired again.
Correct. To get reinstated, back pay, all that stuff.
Okay. So, and then how long? You said April is when you're going to see them?
So the court date is April 1st.
Okay. And so what do you need? What do you need right now in support to get to that point? What's going to help you both get to this point of maybe some people hearing it, the judge, does a judge need to hear this? What needs to happen here?
I think, the judge is going to make whatever decision they make. So we're not looking to influence the judge. I don't think we could, even if we tried. But I think right now what we really need is for people to hear our story, get loud with us, stand shoulder to shoulder with us, because we always say yes, obviously we're fighting to get Matthew reinstated and just right this horrible wrong that we've been dealing with for 2 years. But we're also fighting for all police families, because the reality is that the climate we're living in today around policing, what happened to us can happen to any police family. And so it's yes, stand with us. If you want to buy a t-shirt and support or donate, that's incredible. We're so appreciative, but listen to our story and lean into it. And there are key takeaways that can help protect other police families from going through something similar. So we're really just trying to rally people to stand with us and to help protect themselves as well.
And you wanted to talk about, I know you mentioned it earlier, the Pipettor Foundation. How did you get hooked up with them? And
they, so it's founded by Eddie and Andrea Gallagher, who have a similar story to ours. Eddie was he's a retired Navy chief, so it wasn't policing, but his story was very public, and it happened in San Diego as well. And so, with our parents are all military veterans, so we kind of were monitoring the Gallagher story, and then they were, of course, victorious. And what they did in that aftermath was create the Pipettor Foundation, which supports military first responders and their families during times of crisis like what we're going through, right? When you come under fire for just doing your job. So, they started their foundation. They immediately got behind our case. And they've just been helping us pound the drum, helping us like set the record straight about Matthew's case, and also to fundraise, because as we talked about earlier, like, for us, $100,000 out of pocket is a ton of money. That we really had to scramble to mobilize, and we wouldn't have been able to have that money, raise that money, and stay in this fight without the Pipettor Foundation supporting us and all of our wonderful donors who have really rushed in to help us. And so they've been a really life-saving resource for our family during this fight. I don't think we'd be winning without Pipettor and all the supporters that have really rallied around us. And people like you, Adam, that have given us your platform to help us get our story out there. Because like I said, the reality is this can happen to any police family. So it's so important to get word out there about what people need to be aware of.
Well, it's interesting because the law enforcement groups on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, I feel like they're huge because it's like all I see and other people see when they're in this type of work. That's what you see. So you feel like, why isn't everybody seeing this? Because I know you're seeing all the time, but you realize it's really not. It's really small in comparison, and to getting your voice out and to keep pushing it out, it's got to be it's a daunting task. But you two are really I think I really commend, like I said earlier, commend you guys for continue to fight this on, and even get up on a Saturday morning and have this conversation, because I think that's important for people to hear. And there's a lot of, like you said, takeaways and learning lessons going through this. Is there something, I guess now what you do together? Okay, there's kind of 3 different stages I see with your relationship, and I'm curious if it's changed at all. But so before the incident happened, when you guys got together, during the process of fight, and you kind of mentioned almost like zombie, like looking back and going through it, and then now, and do you see a transformation in how you deal with things now, or how you're going to go forward? Or is it, can you recognize this is now what I will do in any type of situation, based on this? Or I don't know if you can recognize those things, or if there's different steps, or how you would have handled this before and now how you would handle it. You know what I mean? Any challenge.
No, I feel like we obviously are so much stronger from this. I mean, it's and it's I'm not going to dare
don't
the
jinx
universe,
us.
but it's what can happen,
Or no, the better question is what could touch us now? We've survived literally hellfire.
So you feel strong, you feel like our relationship's stronger. Obviously, we're more in touch with our own emotions, and being able to mature in such a fast way. You think you have it together, and then this hits you. It's this you need a different level of strength together in your relationship, because I know if I was single or something, I don't know what I would have done. And so I mean, definitely it made us stronger. I think it's enabled us to grow for our future. I know down the line, some people tell me you're not going to recognize how big of a change, big positive change this is in your life for 10, 20 years looking backwards,
Well, I think within the larger context of faith, we got married in our home church. We've always been people of faith. And then something like this happens. And we were talking about it earlier. I don't believe that as human beings, we're designed to carry this burden on our own. And so we had this baseline faith, which we thought was great at the time. And we had no idea that there's all this room to really transform your faith and deepen your faith. And that is one of the positives that came out of the last 2 years, is our walk in faith now is just it was great before. It's incredible now. And we never want to stop growing that. I think having gone through something so horrific and traumatic, and having to lean on your faith and grow in your spirituality, when we look forward, because life is not perfect, right? The human experience is we're going to experience hardship, and bad things are going to happen. That's just normal. So looking forward, I think that's just that's our mindset for anything, is we just have to root down in our faith, give it to God, pray, and really just trust his will is going to play out the way that it needs to. And that sometimes will supersede what we think we want or need. So it's a completely different mindset going forward based on what we've learned the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, you could see the transformation. I mean, you both seem really confident and strong in where you're coming from, but I know you had to go through a lot. And I can imagine, before this, you wouldn't have known where to start. So like just getting where you are now has got to be, it's a huge
yeah.
change for
I
anybody.
don't think we realized before then that there was like room to grow. We were just like, well, we got married in our church and we pray and we're people of faith. We didn't realize there's this whole other dimension of like truly walking in faith. And we know that now.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I commend both of you. And I'm just like, there's a couple of things I was curious about. So when you get reinstated, I'm saying you're going to get reinstated. We're going to throw positive vibes out here. So when you reinstated, how do you foresee, like, if walking in, do you picture the reaction from the people that are at this department? I mean, I don't know. Have you mentally gone through this in your head? I feel like you've had to.
I've thought about it a lot, and it's like, I just, there was times where it's like, you want to, I don't know. I've thought about it a lot, and I can't even like, I can see it happening, but I can't process like what my mind would even be thinking. I feel like it'd be like such a mind, like it'd just be like my mind would be spinning. I definitely like don't want to like, I wouldn't want to shove it in anyone's face, or like, use it as like a F you to anyone. I think it's like, this is like, I'm doing what anyone in this position would be doing. Any cop should be doing, fighting for their livelihood, fighting for their family. And I would think that anyone in that same department would do exactly what I'm doing too. So to me, there's no hard feelings. I know that like, obviously my eyes are open to certain things. But yeah, I need to like really, so I would need to soak it in for sure. Like it would be a minute where I need to just like take some time and like thank God and just be grateful. But yeah, I mean, we're confident. We're very confident that it's going to go our way, that like once a judge sees it and like, the judge knows the case law, he knows case law and knows like the legal system and knows how police work and knows how all this stuff happens and sees stuff on a regular basis, and that they're going to be like, okay, this hopefully do the right thing, especially now that things are changing in society a little bit. This like the pendulum is moving back a little bit. People are waking up to, hey, like, this went a little bit too far in general across the country, the police stuff. And I think it's time, like you said, to like, for people to make things like this right, and to just admit like, hey, this was not correct, and to not double down on it being wrong, but to just make it right and move forward and move on.
And just let our family start healing, let like the community heal, because every time there's an update in our case, it's headline news, and it's like, we just want to move forward and heal and close this chapter. And I know the community does as well. And it's like, we can't until we get that reinstatement. And so our goal, of course, is, Matthew back in uniform in 2022. So we're very confident.
That's good. So I'm usually asking like, what would you suggest for people? We kind of talked about it already. What would you suggest for people going through something similar or even crisis? And we talked about the idea of fighting and, getting, obviously there's grief, but then fighting. I'm curious now, where you two see yourselves in like 10 years? When you thought about like that, where you see yourselves in the future?
I don't know. I think we definitely want to, like, we've talked about like this whole thing continuing for us in some capacity. It's like we've been made aware of like so many other police families going through similar situations, or just police officers that are like, have similar stories. And, we want to make sure that this doesn't happen to any other police families, like the doxing stuff, like how the IA processes work, how like the railroading, like the political stuff. Like there's really like some major changes that could be made, or at least the awareness that can be given to like a lot of young police officers, and even like police officers that have been on for like 10 years, that, that's like, this can happen to any single one of us. And quite honestly, like what happened to me isn't specific to me. It just so happened that it happened to me on that day, but it could have happened to any other officer that day.
Yeah.
And it would have played out the same way as if it happened to any other officer.
Right. So. And so kind of as we look to close out our chapter, like what Matthew's saying is like, none of this hell that we've had to walk through, none of it makes sense unless we're using everything we've learned to help other police families. And so I don't know exactly what things will look like in 10 years, but our like
It's an arbitrary number. It could be 20, 30.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever in the future.
Yeah.
In the future, in this bright future that we're gonna
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we hope to be parents and start our own family and move forward in that respect, but also just like we're going to be giving back to the law enforcement community and using our platform and our knowledge and our resources to help other families who get caught up in these like political battles just for doing their jobs. Because like Matthew says, it's like today it's us, and tomorrow, next week, 10 years from now, it's going to be another family. And like I said, it just, everything we've learned, everything we went through doesn't make sense if we're not helping other cop families. So yeah.
I like that. And I was I don't know, I was gonna say something and I kind of like lost my train of thought listening to you guys talk, but imagining like your future, like just helping other people. Like you're talking about how even like the Pipettor Foundation created something out of some negativity, and then now they created something great that's helping you, and you can pass that on, which I think is amazing. So I want to just restate like where we can help you. So we can help you. It's at Clear Officer Dages, DAGES.
Yes, on Facebook, Instagram. We're recently on Getter as well. And then
Getter.
It's a new social media platform. We're just learning about it as well.
I don't know. We're just on all the platforms.
Did you create a platform?
Yeah, no. But yeah, so Clear Officer Dages on all social media. The link in the bio will take you to different ways that you can help, not just support us in our fight, but just support our larger fight to protect law enforcement families.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah,
cool.
follow us because we're always we're posting every day there.
Posting updates, case updates.
It's not just like, it's not memes. We're not posting memes like that, but
one thing I realized what I was going to say, and I think this is important. We talked about it earlier, but the IA process, you talked about the fact that people, it's like hush hush, like people get disciplined or get off time or whatever, and it's hush hush. And that's something I really want to do. And you're welcome to come on anytime if you want to talk about it again, but just the idea of like the process to help younger officers understand it and bring light to the stigma behind it and what you feel going through it, because I really think that people don't understand the process, and when they do, they feel shut out, and then people usually distance themselves and don't talk about it. It's in your head all the time.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I remember like right when I essentially was told that it was going to happen, like one of the most senior guys at the department pulled me in a room and was like, "Hey, like this is what's going to happen. Like be prepared for it." He's like, "Starting tomorrow, no one's going to talk to you." Like straight up. And he was being honest. And like, I appreciate that because I needed to understand that. He's like, starting tomorrow, no one's going to talk to you. People that you think are your friends, they're not your friends. Don't talk to anyone either, because he's like, people that you think your friends are not. But that's true. It's like when you get in a situation like that, everyone moves away, right? Because nobody wants to get pulled in. Nobody wants to get involved. Everyone wants to just back away. And then the people that are in trouble or that are dealing with something, they're also scared to talk to anyone because you're like, well, who are they talking to?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And you very quickly become like on an island by yourself. It's very isolating.
I think it was important for anyone that has friends going through this stuff is that you guys are going through it. Like you're going through all this emotional trauma and ups and downs. And I think it's important to reach out. So even if it's just the idea of like calling and saying, hey, or texting or whatever, hey, like, you want to talk? You want to just say hi or whatever? You don't have to talk about the case. Don't worry about all the IA stuff. Just to say, hey, how are you holding up? Because
let's grab a beer. Yeah.
Right. It's important to we do that for each other. I mean, I can imagine if more people would have done that for you, how you would have felt a little more support, even if it wasn't like, hey, maybe I don't want to touch the IA stuff, but just to say, hey, how you doing?
100%. It's like, it's super. And that's something I understand now is like, and I try to do for other guys that I know are going through stuff as right now too. It's like, just to reach out and check in and not to talk police stuff. Just to be like, hey, or did you see this movie yet? Did you watch, like, did you do this? Or, hey, let's go grab a beer later. Like, what are you doing? Like, let's hang out. And just because like, that's super important because everyone that's going through it, until you're going through it, you really don't know, but everyone that's going through it really, they're by themselves. Right. And, you got all this stuff swirling in your head. So yeah, reaching out is like number one. That like is like the biggest, it raises you up because you get to like be with your friends, people that understand.
Yeah, I think that would really reach a lot of people. So next time we'll talk, we won't talk about police stuff at all. Talk about going camping or something.
That's cool.
Yeah. All
right. Well, this is a good interview. I really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully, like we can get this out. I'll put it on YouTube. I'll put it on the Let's Grab a Cup podcast, which is on Apple and Spotify, and you get on the website letsgrabacup.com. You can find me. I'll try to push this out on Instagram, AP_Sturgeon or at Let's Grab a Cup. And then it's at Clear Officer Dages. And then any other Instagram or just Instagram, Facebook, and Glitter. All right, well, thanks for coming on. I'm gonna do this little outro music thing here and see how it goes, and then I'll stop the recording. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks, Adam.